All right. Well, I know we have a relatively short agenda today, and we're trying to wait for a few more members to get here. I know there was a meeting previous to this, but we'll go ahead and call the Ways and Means Committee meeting to order. And Vice Chairman Stinson is going to open us up in a word of prayer, if you would, please, ma'am.
Be honored to, Mr. Chair. May we bow? Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you this morning with thanksgiving in our hearts, thanking you, Lord, for waking us up this morning, starting us on our way. To God, we pray and ask you to be with us throughout this day as we work on behalf of all of Georgia. To lead us, guide us, and let the words of our mouths and the meditation of our heart to always be acceptable in your sight. For it's in Jesus' name we do pray. Amen.
Thank you very much. Senator, Chairman Summers, we have SR 82 that we've heard once before. A couple of changes, but if you want to give us the quick synopsis and.
Chairman, members committee, basically just looking over, Mr. Chairman, I just got it just a minute or two ago. You basically added, it looks like to me you've added a provision here where the schools will have to also sign off on a waiver, if I read that correctly.
Yes, sir.
And then basically, I think that's about the only change, maybe a word or two change on the constitutional question. That looks like about it.
But in general, the bill would allow some of these properties to.
Right, any properties or delinquent properties that are sitting out there that have gotten the value so high in regards to tax value, they can't be sold. This will, after they try it twice, regular sales, and they can't sell it, then this will give the governing authorities the option to either reduce it down to nothing or to a certain amount that they decide to. And each governing authority, including the school systems under the House bill substitute, would be have to sign off on each individual property, not as a whole, just each individual property, the way I read it.
And if I read that correctly, Chairman, you would have to go through the regular process twice.
Yes, gaming the system. We always know there's somebody going to try to game the system, but anybody that owes the taxes, they're not going to be allowed to have theirs reduced. Anybody that buys it for somebody that owes the taxes, it would be reattached to that piece of property as a lien if that were to come up.
All right. Well, is there any questions of the chairman or 14? Representative Holcomb?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. How big of a problem is this across the state, and can you give us any examples?
That'd be hard for me to honestly give you that answer. It's bigger and Dante Handel here with ACCG might be able to talk to you. It's bigger in your bigger metropolitan areas, obviously, than in the rural counties. But some of these, I checked in my rural area. In my rural area, we have 3 properties right now that are basically probably 2/3 tax value for what the property's worth. And I don't know how they got left on the sheets for that long, but they're there, and we'd get rid of those. That's just that one area. And then, Dante, if you want to address that, please come up. And with ACCG, you might be able to give you some more. We have found out it's a little bit stronger in your metropolitan area.
Yeah, go ahead, Dante, if you've got an answer to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Black, members of the committee. Dante Handel with ACCG. It's definitely going to vary county by county, and it's difficult to get an exact number, and that there's no central repository for this. You'd probably have to reach out to your individual tax commissioners, but any property where the total amount of taxes, penalty, and interest is greater than the market value of that property. We have seen in a lot of cases where it ends up being a burned up trailer or an otherwise overgrown derelict or blighted property. So for whatever reason, it's just particularly undesirable and it will not sell for that amount of current delinquent taxes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Chairman.
Thank you for this bill. And you mentioned I think near the end of this, around lines 68, 69, you talked about bad actors. So basically, if I own the property, I don't pay the taxes, I can't find somebody to buy it for me at a lesser value, which is what they're going to do. And then they go back and sell it to me.
Go ahead, Dante. But anytime you're gaming the system, anytime you're trying to game the system, they can't reduce it for you personally. Now, if you get your brother-in-law or your best friend to go buy it from you, and they know that's what's happening, and you try to buy the property back, that tax will be added back to it as a lien on that property.
Thank you.
That makes Thank you. Yes, sir. That's the best way we know to keep from gaming the system. Yes, sir.
All right, so is that, Representative Fry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How long would that be, that lien? So like, an existing property owner would have, 12 months to redeem it if the property was sold at a tax sale?
That's right.
So can't that loophole be taken advantage of once the redemption period is gone? Or are we charging the cities or the tax commissioners to pay attention to if Dante bought your property and then at month 13 you just sold it back to Dante at the discount? That's not,
Go ahead. Yeah, I know what you're.
Yeah, so under this resolution, the right of redemption is preserved, same as it exists under current law. So let's say that the person, they lose their property, it's sold at the sale, they want to exercise their right of redemption, so they buy it back, and it's 120%. So the amount that was paid at the sale plus the purchaser from the sale gets an additional 20% for their interest in the property. Then any of the taxes, penalties, or interest that were waived at the sale automatically reattach as a lien to that property to prevent them trying to game it through the right of redemption. So that's how we're protected against it there.
but on month 13 it can be done easily, correct?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. Could
So
you
if the
repeat?
right of redemption period is for 12 months, so are we saying that our tax commissioners have to pay attention to that in perpetuity, to whether that property is actually transferred back to the individual that lost it at the tax sale? Or are they only supposed to pay attention for 12 months? How does that work?
So I believe there's language in the bill that says that lien is subject to the same provisions of law as for other properties upon which taxes are delinquent. So same procedures as are under current law, none of that's changing.
Okay, so, but that lien is only placed when the right of redemption is exercised, is that correct?
I don't think that that's necessarily true.
Okay, so if a lien is placed on the property, then how are they able to transfer it to a new individual without that lien being satisfied?
So I think if the original owner exercises the right of redemption, then that lien, you're right, does go into effect when the right of redemption is exercised. However, if the taxpayer does not exercise the right of redemption and then tries to buy it back after, I think it still reattaches as a lien.
Where is that in the bill?
You just got this substitute.
The sub only changed, added the schools in as part of the waiver, and then changed the language of the CA question.
I mean, I think the piece regarding the lien is on line 73 through 75 of the substitute.
Representative, is there something you want to add to that to get to rectify that if you see a problem with it? Because what I look at it is if the guy redeems his property that was trying to game the system, he's going to have an additional 12 months sitting out there. The county's going to know it, and the tax lien would stay in place. But now I could be wrong telling you that, and I know where you're going with your question, and I'm perfectly content if you've got something you think that can rectify that if you see it's not clarity.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking me that. No, and just in going through this, the way the liens work is that once that lien is cleared, which I assume would be at the end of that 12-month redemption period, but the lien isn't even placed unless the redemption is exercised. And then when the new owner wants to clear it for themselves, if the lien is on the property,
Our tax commissioner told us basically, that testified in the Senate hearing, that, for example, let's just say you and I do that and you buy it from, I'm bad, I hadn't paid my taxes, you're buying it from me as a friend. then in 12 months, you're gonna transfer it back. The tax commissioner would know that I got the property back, and they would re-exercise the tax lien on the property. That's what we were sort of told in our hearing. And I know where you're going with it, but that's just how we knew we could basically, that we have to rely on the tax commissioner to be able to know who's getting the property back. And I
So-
agree with what you're saying.
And I appreciate the
Right.
concept of the bill. I think it's putting a net over a bucket of water and flipping it upside down, honestly, because you can create any sort of LLC. I mean, you gave the example of you and your brother-in-law. I mean, this really isn't going to do anything as far as gaming the system is my point. It may do something on the front end, but
Well, from what we're told, that if you get the taxes down to where an individual, like anybody sitting in this room here, can go buy that piece of property, there's gonna be more people bidding on that property than the guy who just sat there and didn't pay his taxes on his property. So he's gonna be fighting to get his property, which he's probably not gonna be able to get it back, because somebody's gonna pay what they think the property's worth by the property.
no, I understand. And I
Yes.
get the intent. I think this is a valiant attempt to get properties back into the market that are being unused. I just don't think the loophole has been closed on this the way y'all think it has.
If I may, Chairman Blackman, a couple comments on this. So if someone from the jump were to try to game the system, to try and get a reduced amount of taxes paid on that property, they'd still need to take their property through tax sale twice and hope that no one buys it. I mean, and if someone were to buy it, then they either lose the property or they exercise that right of redemption at a much higher rate than if they were able to go to that reduced minimum bid tax sale. It would be a lot of risk and a lot of unknowns and uncontrollable factors for them to be able to do that. I think the second piece of it, if you were to look at lines 62 through 66, the owner of record or any person having record title or interest in or lien upon the property is how we're trying to cover the person and their brother-in-law or any other way they can try and game that. And if they get caught doing it, then that's how they get caught in this.
Mr. Chair, I mean, I absolutely understand. I'm just telling you that either the loophole closure language is not even needed based on the example that you just described and the risk involved, but it's not closing the loophole based on the way property transactions are conducted in the state of Georgia. Thank you.
Two more questions here. Vice Chairman Crowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And sort of to piggyback off what and have a little bit of discussion with Representative Fry on that, I think, and you kind of hit the point that I was going to make, it would take a pretty elaborate scheme to do this, because first of all, you've got to not pay your taxes to the point that they have a tax sale. Then you have to get the commissioners and the school board to pass a resolution authorizing the lowering of the taxes. And then you've got to get somebody related to you to go buy it after it fails to sell twice at a tax sale, then get them reduced, and then get somebody to buy it, and then sell them back to you. So I think there's no perfect, we can try to close all the loopholes we can on everything, and people find a way around them at some point sometimes. But I think it'd be pretty elaborate to try to do that intentionally. And the way I read this with the lien, I understand it only attaches if that person redeems it during that 1 year period. Is that correct? The owner of record redeems it, because they're going to pay the person who bought it at the tax sale everything they paid and make them whole. But that won't include the reduced amount of taxes. So that other amount will then attach as a lien for this person going back, so that they would have to make the county whole before they could sell it again.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman Knight.
Sort of a follow-up, but looking at it from a commissioner's point of view. So how long will the commissioner have to sit out there? In other words, let's just say brother-in-law bought the property and caught everything up, and the original owner lives in it 2 years, 5 years, 7 years, and then it reverts back. My question is more from the commissioner's point of view: who's responsible for keeping up with that? Should it revert back to the owner, or is there, in other words, is it forever, or am I missing some part of the bill? In other words, 3 years into it, the original owner buys it back from the brother-in-law. Does the lien still attach and the original owner still owe the property? It's more from the commissioner's point of view, who keeps up with this I guess is my question. And for how long do they keep up with it to make sure that the original property owner doesn't come back and?
So I think Representative Crow hit the nail on the head, and that lien is only attaching or reattaching when the right of redemption is. And then let's say, for argument's sake, that the property found its way back into the hands of the original owner. Well, that original owner wasn't paying taxes on that property before. I mean, very likely we end up in the same boat if they're willing to go through all of these steps and they give it back to the person who wasn't paying the delinquent taxes to begin with. It probably ends up back in this process.
I don't think there's a time amount, as your question, about 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 10 years. I don't know that was in there.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, one more, just to make sure I'm understanding it. But is it the point of the legislation to keep up with the original owner for how long? Just up until the 12 months expires after the redemption or a potential redemption, or is it to keep up with the owner coming back 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years later? In other words, are we just leaving that out there hanging? And what does the bill say, or what is the intention of the bill in that scenario?
Yeah, so the intent of the legislation is to try and take these properties that aren't paying tax and restore them to some sort of productive use where the taxes are being paid. We're cleaning up some of those abandoned, derelict, or otherwise blighted properties and try and get them back on the tax rolls. As far as the original owner, I mean, I think the bill contemplates it for a year after the sale.
A year.
That's what the answer is.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That's all I'm getting
Yeah,
at.
year.
That way the commissioner is not.
Yes, a year.
Okay.
Chairman Williamson, how you on?
Thank you. Sorry, I hit my button. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I've got a couple of thoughts about this, but what problem are we trying to solve, these abandoned properties? Do you have any statistics on how many abandoned properties that fit this situation right now? Maybe that was discussed before I got here.
No, sir, I don't, Chairman Williamson. It's one of those things where outside of polling all the tax commissioners, we don't have a number.
So that's what I'm trying to get at, was how large is the problem?
I had told them in my little area, Chairman Williamson, that I had 3 in my area, 3 taxes, 3 pieces of property that have now basically exceeded the value of the property on taxes. Why they've been left so long, we don't know, but they're there. And going back to your original question, if these pieces of property had their taxes waived down even 80% down, immediately someone would buy them on the steps, immediately. They wouldn't let the owner get them back. I mean, somebody else would buy them immediately. But I don't know the answer, how many's out there.
And a follow-up, I do not disagree with what you just described there, but in every one of the examples, the 3 pieces of property in your district, are they all currently assessed by the county tax assessor at a higher value than the taxes that are due, or a lower value than the taxes due? What I'm saying is, it might be a willing buyer doesn't want them right now, but what does the county tax assessor think they're valued at? What have they been assessed
Well,
at?
if I had to tell you, I think everything in our area is evaluated too high. But going back to your question, I don't know the answer to that, how they got it valued. You have,
Well, I still don't know a definitive number for you, but I would say in order for the taxes owed to exceed the value of the property, I mean, either those taxes would have had to go unpaid for a very long time, because the millage rate is only a single-digit percentage of the value of the property, or something's had to have happened that has drastically reduced the value of that property.
All right, we 4 lights. All right, we're going to go Chairman Newton, Chair Lady Houston, Representative Washburn, and then it looks like Chairman Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I found the answer to my question. I was making sure that the Board of Commissioners as well as the Board of Education can't do kind of a blanket policy, a resolution that covers it. This is going to require those resolutions by both the Board of Education and by the county commissioners for each individual parcel. Exactly. For them to advance. Now, they may do several in one meeting, but each one is going to have its own resolution. That keeps it from becoming just a policy of the tax commissioner that's been approved one time. So I like the specificity of that to require, with the public notice that goes along with that. And I'm assuming those resolutions can't be done even until it's failed twice at auction. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. That's a nice guardrail. Thank you.
Chair Lady House.
I listened to your definition a few minutes ago. You described a land bank authority. Why don't you go and buy a land bank authority? Why are you doing this and not doing a land bank authority? You did the perfect definition of a land bank authority. Except land bank authority puts the land back in for production. And I don't know who's going to do it after you sell the land, and who's going to be responsible for putting it back into production. Why don't you do a land bank authority?
So I appreciate that question, Representative Houston, and I think we talked about this a little bit at the last Ways and Means meeting when this came up. I think that a land bank authority is an excellent mechanism to try and clean up these types of properties. Very often, we have a lot of counties that don't have the resources to pull together the land bank, especially if we're only talking about a few properties that they're managing. So this gives them a mechanism in addition to a land bank. So it's an alternative way of trying to solve this problem.
All right, the next question, much of this is heirs property? Heirs property?
I don't believe any.
So you've got title on all of these things?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Representative Washburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I commend the senator for bringing the bill, and Dante, I appreciate all your work on this.
Thank you.
And Chair Lady Houston's question is certainly very good about the land bank. But this is a good bill because it makes it easier and simpler to take properties, vacant lots mostly, that are not going to sell for the amount of the taxes, and puts them back in production. And hopefully they'll begin to produce some revenue. Many vacant lots, with no disrespect to the tax assessors in the room or otherwise, are badly overvalued. We all know there's one proof of market value, and that's what somebody in the free market will step up and pay for it. And so these lots won't sell anywhere near what the tax assessor puts on them as fair market value. Frankly, I've chosen not to go appeal several lots that we own because I looked at how much tax I'd have to pay, and I realized that my time was worth a lot more to just pay the tax rather than go argue about it. But these lots that are sitting there not producing revenue need to be put in production and into the income stream for the local governments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Carpenter.
Thank you so much, Chairman. And I just a quick question, and it's just because I've never been involved in much of this, but the two auctions, are auctions held monthly, or are auctions held like this week, the next week, and the third one would be the following week? How often are property auctions held in a community?
Yeah, I think that's at the discretion of the tax commissioner, but they are advertised well in advance. I think they need to run legal notice in the paper.
I just think maybe you got. I would have a little heartburn with the two auction conversation if it's not spread out over a little bit longer period of time. If you've got, maybe you got rainy weather on one day of auction and the next one's
usually the second Tuesday of each month. Usually.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
sir.
I mean, maybe some clarifying language on that says 60 days with two auctions or something, because you get a rainy day one day, nobody shows up, and then the Masters or NCAA tournaments the next week, and nobody's coming because they're watching basketball or whatever. So that would be my only concern with the legislation.
Yes.
Chairman Knight, do you have another question? Chairman Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was thinking the exact same thought of train as Chairman Carpenter was then. If you go to line 20, I was wondering something to the effect of, to make, I agree with everybody that the fair market will work as long as it's been properly advertised, as long as enough people know that there's this opportunity out there. But I was just thinking if the Arthur would be a minimal, maybe say a minimum of not 2 but 3 auctions, but I would put some kind of qualifier in there where at least X number of parcels or more are being auctioned, where there is enough attention to this tax sale that nothing's gonna slide through the cracks because there's nothing intriguing going on in the tax sale for the average courthouse investor, a courthouse step investor, where they're coming in buying tax sale properties. Something to that effect to make sure there's more attention to the sale.
I can't speak to what happens, Representative Williams in the metropolitan areas, but in my area down there, I went to 2 tax sales in the past 4 months. There were like 3 people there at each sale. There was just no one there, and these are conducted every second Tuesday of each month.
And properties are being auctioned off because there's a huge community that follows this statewide, these tax sales. I know that for a fact.
Right.
And if there's anything intriguing, there'd be more than 3 people there.
I think that does give me a couple of concerns, Representative Williamson. One, I think there are a couple tax commissioners, at least a handful, where they kind of conduct one of these sales every few months. And so we'd be encouraging them to hold on to a certain amount of properties before they try and move on any of them, whether or not we think they would fall under these delinquent sales. And then there is also a cost associated with advertising and holding those hearings. So if we move it from 2 to 3, that is a consideration as
Well,
well.
if you left it at 2 and then just made sure there's X number of parcels being sold, if he's gonna hold, he or she are gonna hold it for 2 or 3 months, probably they're doing that to aggregate enough properties where they can advertise them all at one time. That's just a suggestion.
Are you thinking maybe 3 to 5 properties? I'm open.
I don't know how you'd fix that, but I just do think that there needs to be more opportunities for the investment community to show up. You could say.
If you guys see to pass this, and we need to do cleanup language next year, if we see it's causing an issue, I'm all aboard, so I'm there.
I'm not against the measure, I'm against possible fraud.
Yeah, I agree.
Chairman Newton.
Kind of as a follow-up to that, I know some counties in Georgia, at least one I know of, Glenn County, participates in an electronic one, which of course is vastly more than the legal organ on the Thursday before the following Tuesday, the 3 ads that there would be about a tax sale. And I know there's multiple counties in Tennessee and Alabama that are in that same group of govies.com, this particular auction. That would assure you that there wasn't any of the intrigue that Chairman Williamson mentioned, that you were really getting closer. You've actually failed on a true market value rather than the what Chairman Carpenter mentioned about the rainy day with 3 parcels on the docket. Is there any consideration to maybe rewarding the counties that take part in an electronic, which vastly improves your likelihood of getting market value? Especially, is there any consideration to, if you use, are there multiple online auction providers that could help governments?
So I think there's a piece of legislation that's been working its way through the General Assembly during the 23 and 24 sessions that expands the ability for online participation in a tax sale. Senate Bill 13, and the status of that one is a conference committee where the Senate has adopted that conference committee report, but the House is not.
Is that online something the counties support? Or are they equivocal or what?
We're neutral on that legislation, but it would help with that issue that you're discussing.
Thank you.
Chair Lady Houston, yes,
Would these auctions be done at the same time that we see, my county has auctions of property and it's listed in the legal ads and everything? This would be listed in the legal ads with the others. Would it take place at the same time all the other county auction land would take place?
I don't know if they'd all be the same exact time, but this
Why would you do this separately from when you have all the other land? I think like twice a year we have a big sale. Our county tax commission has a big sale. Why wouldn't it be with the other things that are being auctioned off?
Well, I believe this would be with the same time that the tax commissioner's auctioning items. Just if there are other sale mechanisms, then I think that could diverge.
This wouldn't just be a sale by itself.
No, ma'am. The county commissioners make that decision too, as far as that, when they
Yeah.
decide to waive that.
Yeah. If they could waive and just have these three little properties for sale by themselves.
Your county, your school board, et cetera. We'd have to do it all together for each individual property.
No, but I know in our local paper, it's page after page of people who haven't paid taxes.
5 pages.
And they advertise, if you pay your taxes by this time, if not, we're gonna sell the property on the courthouse square. On this, I think it's the first Tuesday maybe of the month. And ours is like in December, but they advertise. Would this be listed like that?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
With those other things, or would it be a separate listing and a separate sale?
It would be, I think, listed along with them at that sale date.
You think? Would it be
Yeah, it could be, yes, ma'am, it could be either or. They could have it at the same time, yes.
well, why wouldn't you put it with other properties when you've got a big crowd coming?
Sounds like it's at the discretion of
I
the
think it's at the
commissioner,
discretion of the
is the way it sounds like.
I think it's discretion of the county, Ms. Benny.
Representative Stinson?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't mean to prolong the time, but I did have to step out for another meeting, and this question may have been asked while I was away, but I just want to know, does this put more on, is this an extra layer of work for our tax commissioners? It won't. It just, because when I hear you speak of the bad apples, like how would someone even know that the example that you gave earlier, that if I lost my property and my sister-in-law comes along and purchase it and then turn around and sell it back to me, how would our tax commissioners really know that they sold it back to me?
So I think that this could create additional work, but a negligible amount of additional work. I mean, it would be limited only to properties that are delinquent on the tax, a little more vigilant, but it's going to be a very restricted number of properties. And I do believe that Gato's comfortable with this legislation.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Is the counties are asking for this, I'm assuming, is the interested party?
Yes, sir. Chairman Blackman, ACCG is asking for it, and we're supportive of this legislation.
Okay. Chairman, I just to weigh in, I mean, we can take action on this today, but there are an awful lot of questions, and it is a constitutional amendment. In my opinion, estimation, it may be worthwhile for us to have a few more questions. We still have some time to get this out and get it passed for you, but being that it does amend the Constitution, we may want to get a couple of these things ironed out, make sure we're comfortable as a committee. Does anybody have any other thoughts on that?
Mr. Chairman, I'm good with the committee's, whatever you all decide to do. We tried to get it out last year. We got about to this point, and that's where we were. Stopped again.
There's an awful lot of questions.
ACG keeps asking me, so when we'll get it out? And I said, I guess we'll get it out when we get it out.
Well, we certainly have weighed some of the pros and cons and looked at the merits of the bill and the resolution. And I mean, I think we have heard some strong advocacy, and I think we've also heard some questions. Chairman Prince, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I tell you, this is something that we definitely need to work on because cleaning up blight in communities, this I think is going to help go a long way in getting it clean, and we definitely need it down in my areas. Thank you.
And I'm okay with the will of the committee, Mr. Chairman. So whatever y'all decide to do.
All right. Well, I'll leave it to the will of the committee as well. Chairman Carpenter.
Move to pass with amendments. I make a motion, move to pass.
I think if we're going to make some changes, then we probably need to put those together and bring a sub back.
That's right.
I think,
I can leave whatever y'all
yeah,
decide.
because I don't think we really settled on anything necessarily specific
Does that mean
today. You would not have to come back.
Tuesday, Wednesday? Oh,
It
we had to come
means
back. I don't
you would
mind.
not have to come back personally, no, sir. We would try to work on that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, then we're going to call that a second hearing, and then we'll try to clean this up as best we can and get it
Yes, sir.
moving. Thank you, Chairman. I
Thank you.
appreciate
Thank you
you
for your
spending the
time,
time.
guys. Thank you.
We'll work to get that thing across the finish line for you, sir.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you,
guys.
Chairman.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Dante. And we have a hearing on a House bill that was dropped late in the session. Chairman Jaspers, House Bill 1357. And I know you have some people here that would also like to testify, so. Floor is yours, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee. Thank you for letting me bring this bill at this late date. It's really just for your thought and discussion. You know, just as I witnessed the Ways and Means Committee vigorously discusses and looks at things carefully, and I appreciate you doing that. With me, I have Ryan Pardee. Did I say it right? Petey. Golly, okay, Petey. Okay, with me to talk about the bill in the detail. This bill is about rural railroads and urban railroads. You know, we have 29 railroads operating in our state with 5,000 miles of track. And they are a vital link to our economic development engine. They deliver raw inputs, just like they deliver finished products to the port and all across the states. Yeah, I don't know if you know it, but these railroad operators take millions of trucks off the roads. And the tax credit we're seeking seeks to capitalize on this rural network and the expertise of the railroad partners to enhance economic development throughout our state where these railroads reach. I'm not just talking about Norfolk Southern and CSX, but the many other railroad partners who connect to these big two. We know that through the many meetings of the freight and logistics committees that have met for the last 3 years, that our freight is expected to double by 2050. And part of this must be on the railroads. And this proposal seems to, works to make that possible. And I appreciate y'all really looking at this, questioning it. We'd like to come up with something for next year. I know y'all work on things in the off season, Mr. Chairman, but thanks for letting us be here today. And I'll turn it over to Ryan.
Okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Ryan Petey with Mickelson and Company, and we're a finance consulting firm that helps short lines across the state of Georgia finance infrastructure improvement work. So we work with most of the 20 or 22 of the short lines in the state. We also work with short lines across the United States, and mostly it's geared towards helping finance infrastructure improvements and promoting economic development opportunities. So this bill in front of you is all about economic development, and I'll hit on some of the high points. You've got a slide deck in front of you and some other illustrations and maps, but the state of Georgia has been considered number one in economic development probably for the last 10 years. And a big part of that's paying wages, good wages, having attractive incentives, and then having a very robust transportation infrastructure system. As Representative Jaspers pointed out, the next 30 years, freight movements are predicted to double. The state's already home to 2 of the top 5 worst congestion points and bottlenecks in the country, and there's another 2 or 3 that are also troublesome. And so if you look at Metro Atlanta and the ports, those are areas of concern when you're trying to grow your state. This program is a pathway to help bridge these industrial parks and ports to the rail network, and it provides a tax credit incentive to do so. Most of you have economic development groups in your communities that are charged with going after new business, helping businesses expand. There are 100 industrial development sites in the state of Georgia that are 100 acres or more that do not have rail access. 46 of these sites, 100 acres or more, are at least a mile away from rail. And what compounds that is it's expensive to fix track and it's expensive to build new track. So if you're going to build an off-ramp to get from the existing rail network to an industrial park that doesn't have rail, it's $3 million a mile. And that's not including land acquisition, grading, transload structures, other things that are very important for facilitating the economic development opportunities. So this bill that's in front of you it's not a handout. It is a tax credit, but it's designed for infrastructure to be put into the ground to link these industrial parks and ports and businesses to the freight network. There's 2 components. They're both capped on a per project basis, so this doesn't get out of control in terms of cost. One's a 50% credit for building out the necessary rail infrastructure to connect these projects, and that's got a cap of $4 million a project. The second part would be another incentive, a 10% tax credit to get the businesses to locate adjacent to these railroads or in these specific industrial parks. Economic development's incredibly competitive, and the state is always competing with other states in the southeast and across the country. A big driving factor on a lot of these large projects is, do we have rail, do we have access to rail, and how do we pay for it? And so this is a program that's proven and works. It was recently introduced in the state of Oklahoma. They've had a $12 million pilot program that started last July, and in the first 6 months, their $12 million pilot program was oversubscribed. They've had over $100 million worth of submissions. They did pick 14 projects comprising $60 million worth of projects. This year, their program's already oversubscribed, and we're not through the first quarter, so they'll probably look to double that in their legislature. And so this would be a good program for the state. It would empower your local economic development groups, but it would also help the short lines and other rail providers in these rural areas have a new incentive to bring new opportunities, ease supply chain congestion, and create new jobs. Be happy to answer any questions. Thanks for the opportunity to share this program.
All right, I don't know if we have anybody else set up to speak or, okay. We have a few questions here. I'll try to get you on in best order we can. Chair Lady Camp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and the gentleman who came to present today. I appreciate this, and I was looking at the area that is now what is my new district in Spalding County, for example, and just checking this out, based on this wonderful handout you guys did for us, it says that there are 100 industrial sites of at least 100 acres or more not currently served by rail, and that 46 of these are within 1 mile of rail access. Do we have any kind of list on those properties? Just out of curiosity to see where they are. I'm sure they're dispersed throughout the state, but I was curious.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, yes, we do have a list of the sites, and I think it might have even been cited improperly in the slide deck, but the data did come from Select Georgia, and so be happy to share and work with you on some of that data to see where it is located.
All right, thank you.
Chairman Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned, I know we've got some great short line railroads now. Is part of this to encourage development near where they already are, or is this mostly where they aren't, but either existing or new short lines could develop to this mile or two? That's one question.
You bet. Mr. Chair, Representative, I think would you like to go first?
Please go ahead.
The first and foremost goal is to really support the existing short lines that are there that are trying to drive their business and have an incentive so that they can connect with their local industrial park or a business that's maybe expanding. So I'd say first and foremost, but when incentives are in place, there is a if you build it, they will come kind of element, and having this incentive in place will be, I think, powerful for rural Georgia to attract some projects to go to places that might fit depending on the infrastructure needs, but most definitely a rural and short line driven program.
If I can follow up, you did mention 100-acre industrial sites. I know we have data centers on several hundred acres, and we got other battery factories and things like that might really need trucking. Is there like an application process that some entity, economic development or someone, would take applications, and ones that were most in need of trucking, we're trying to get them off trucks and onto rail, would there be a prioritization process to say, hey, these sites should get priority because they're going to be either loading 80 trucks a day up or they're going to be going on a railroad? Is that what's being considered in this?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, Representative, that'll ultimately be, I think, a policy decision in the rulemaking process. I would tell you that the directive of this is rural, and it is to get trucks off the highway. But also it's not to pit trucks versus rail. There's, the state of Oklahoma's program works to promote transload sites that work kind of hand in hand with these short lines, and so we certainly see that as a potential element for driving some success, easing some of the supply chain bottleneck. Ultimately, this would be set up where the Department of Economic Development would administer this, and they'd be given some latitude for developing and promulgating rules. And so I would imagine as part of that directive, there would be some criteria established, however they see fit. But I think an emphasis on rural and those types of projects would make sense.
Well, thank you for working on getting those bottlenecks that you showed on your map that affect all our families with the large trucks on the road. If we can get them to Murray County or to Gainesville or wherever the transload is at.
I'll just add, Chairman Newton, that's why we're here, for good questions just like you asked. Could there be a priority in the ones that would have the biggest impact, especially early on in the process?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Knight.
Thank you. To my friend, I guess one of the questions I have, and it certainly, I know Representative Camp had talked about Spalding County, and obviously she's taken over, but we have a lot of rail, that has traditionally come through there. And please forgive me if I'm forgetting some of the law, but I'm going to get straight to the point. From a tax incentive perspective of credit, help me go back through the process if someone were to acquire new land. In other words, where I'm going with this would be, I would hate to have a process where we condemn land, and I may be getting off track here, but help me think through the process. To make sure there's no way that you condemn land, an industrial authority or whatever, and then all of a sudden tax incentives follow that. And I may be wrong on that. It's just something that's out there that I want to make sure. I don't think that would seem very fair, if you would, to private property owners. And I may be mistaken in not remembering all of the process of acquiring land if it were to go through an industrial development authority, and then transfer it out. I think you see where I'm going with this.
Sure, yes, sir.
To my friend. I don't think that's inherently fair with the, sorry, calendar. That would be one of my concerns, to make sure that we don't incentivize.
Sure. Be a good guardrail to have in there, Chairman Knight, in that world. Because I think mostly what we're looking at is the ones that are adjacent to right now, from the way I understand it,
Yeah.
that are already on a short line, that are industrial park. And I know just over the years in the Rural Development Council, this has been something, as we've gone all over the state of Georgia, we've seen this.
Mm-hmm.
And you see these great sites with a rural railroad at it, CSX not too far away. They're all interconnected, but they can't develop it just because of the cost, and that's what we're just trying to address.
Yeah.
Chairman Knight, and then Chair Lady Houston. Carpenter, excuse me.
That's all
I said
right. I've
Knight
been
again.
called much worse down here, I can assure you, Chairman Knight. So just a couple of quick questions. First one is, currently we have a 30% rail credit. Is that still in currently for rehab, et cetera? Is that, so you're looking to move the 30 to 50, is that?
Well, Mr. Chairman, Representative, to clarify, there is an existing state tax credit program in the state, and that is specifically geared towards rehabilitating and maintaining the mainline infrastructure for the short line railroads.
Okay.
And that's, every short line in the state can qualify. It's a 50% credit with like a per mile cap, $3,500 a mile. So it's limited to how do we bolster the infrastructure to handle the commodities that are coming on the railroad.
Okay.
And that mirrors, what 10 other states have done. But that's specific to just maintaining the existing infrastructure.
Okay.
It's working really well. Railroads have to spend the money first. All these programs are set up where the investment into the infrastructure must take place first, but that's a separate program for
Okay.
this.
And then my next question is, if we're talking about expanding rail from a trunk line to an industrial park, is it two questions, I guess. The first one is, if there's 4 companies that are going to share that, how would that tax credit break down between the 4 companies? The other question would be, is why could a community has the industrial park not bond out these projects? And if that's feasible, is there an opportunity to provide a transferable tax credit, close your ears, Chuck Martin, for the cities to sell to do that in their initial package? And then, third question, who owns the rail when it's all said and done?
Do you want to answer
No,
that?
please have at it.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Representative, so make sure I unpack this the right way. So I think if you're looking at a project that's going to take place, right, you ultimately have the railroad, you'll have the project that's locating, there'll be a rail provider, the economic development group. There'll be a bunch of different moving parts. How we've seen this work in other states is they'll work to decide who's going to make the application on behalf of the project. Maybe it's the local economic development group. Maybe it's the project owner. And a lot of it depends on the type of commodity, the type of investment, and who wants to own the infrastructure. Does the customer want to own the rail infrastructure to get, from the main line to their plant? There's a lot of moving parts. I think if you have a program that is sort of flexible and adaptable, that could give the railroad, the customer, or the community or the economic development group the ability to earn the credit for making the infrastructure investment, then I think it's set up where you can kind of set the stack of incentives, if you will, to make the project work.
Chair Lady Houston.
I am all for railroads. I don't know if you've been to Nashville, Georgia lately, but we have a small railroad that goes through town, and it has really been a boost to our town, but it's sort of a tourist thing. And we would like to see other things carried on the railroad besides tourists, but we're getting so many tourists in town to ride the train that we're building a depot in town. So, there's a company that would really like a spur coming across there, and I hope we can see this come about. And come down and ride our train sometime.
Love to. All right. Yes, I think the original author of the short line tax credit has a question for you, Representative Stinson.
Well, no, not a question, just a statement, and you just made it, so that's what I want to make sure that you knew that I'm definitely in support of anything relating to short lines. So thank you for your work on this legislation. I look forward to supporting it when the time comes.
Thank you.
All right. I don't see any more questions, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate y'all being here and sharing that. We'll look for you back next year, I guess, for some further discussion.
Mr. Chairman, if you have any ideas to make it better, as the members do, please contact me, because we'd like to see it done.
Thank you, Chairman Jaspers. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Mr. Ledford, I did not see your name signed up earlier on Senate Resolution 82. I would like to give you the opportunity to speak real quick back on that resolution if you'd like to.
Sure. Jeff Ledford with the Georgia Realtors, and we're in support of SR 82. We feel it's a good way to get some properties back into the market, back into usefulness. We kind of look at them as they've kind of become an albatross where nobody wants them because of the price tag that comes with them. I know there was some concern being discussed about the potential fraud that could be done with this, of someone getting someone else to buy it for them and having a deal later. I think our understanding is that Title 16, 1020.1, which is a fraud against public administration, would likely cover that. So, again, we appreciate you taking the time to hear our thoughts on it, and I look forward to hopefully seeing something happening with it. Thanks.
Very good. So, Realtors and ACCG working on this together.
Hey, the last time we had something where we came together like this on reusing property that was either abandoned or unused, it turned out to be fantastic. I think that was in 2017. So look forward to it again.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Does anybody have anything further? Doesn't look like it. All right. Well, I thought this would be our final meeting. Looks like we're going to have another one. So we'll see you back at some point between now and the end. Yes, ma'am. Representative Stinson?
Yeah, if I may, I just want to just take a quick moment and just say welcome to Evelyn Johnson, representing Fort Valley State University Alumni Association here today. She's in our meeting. She drove up from Fort Valley to be here, so just wanted to welcome her
very
to the
good.
Ways and Means Committee meeting.
That's good to have you. I thought it was the Fort Valley State
Yes,
University.
sir, the Fort Valley State
All right,
University, and
much
we
better.
invite all of you to our ham and eggs breakfast the April 24th.
All right,
So
very
you'll
good.
be hearing more about that.
All right, very good. All right, well, thank y'all. I can't thank you enough for the work this past session and all during the off session last year. So looks like we got a little bit more work to do, and we'll try to get that taken care of in the next couple of days. Thank y'all for being here today. Nothing further. We stand adjourned.